this is my review of Sonic X. Okay, so as it turns out, Sonic and his friends being on Earth is apparently a problem, according to this episode. So, it starts off with Scarlet Garcia actually making a report on the news. We only hear her voice, but she does make a report about the freedom movement and how widespread it's become to the point where it's effectively worldwide. And how, as a result of it, as a result of the freedom movement, people have started not only quote unquote quitting their jobs, but have actually started going on to break world records. They've actually started to break the overall speed records for a lot of different things. Chris included in that statement, I should mention. But in any case, as everybody's kind of celebrating the freedom movement, we actually see Dr. Eggman, who has since had to take up Deco and Boko's cooking job because they're now working for the Thorndikes and have started actually started doing landscaping for them and are even happy about working for them because they actually get time off. They actually get time off while working for the Thorndikes, whereas with Dr. Eggman, he didn't give them time off. He just made them work for free. He never actually gives them any time off. So they're happy to actually have that. And meanwhile, Chris returns home from school, and they tell him that his parents are actually waiting for him in the backyard, so he goes to go see them. And then they remark how he's a good kid, and they are very happy to have made him and made friends with him, and even remark that it felt like only yesterday they were trying to kill him. So yeah, things actually go forward. But in any case, but also back to Eggman. He's taken up Deco and Boko's cooking job, and Bokoon is quick to point out that Dr. Eggman isn't a very good cook. He more or less just serves Bokoon and himself lumber. That's all he knows how to make. He basically cooks logs and lumber and a whole bunch of other things and makes it into food. And he does the same thing by making an actual mud pie for dessert. So obviously Dr. Eggman isn't faring very well. But when Bokoon points out that if Deco and Boko were there, they would actually their food. He admits their food wasn't exactly edible, but it would be better than whatever Eggman's trying to make. But Dr. Eggman merely points out that he doesn't want them back because they effectively betrayed him, and they can rust for all he cares. But in any case, in the backyard, everybody and their friends have actually met with one another. And everybody is actually in the backyard doing a grill out with Nelson Thorndike actually cooking food himself. As it turns out, he's not the best cook. He actually, in fact, a very large joke in this scene is that his food he's not as good he's about as comparable a cook as Eggman is. And Ella even admits that she's kind of okay with not coming back for seconds. And even tries to forego eating entirely to just make sure everybody else has enough, as she puts it. But of course Nelson doesn't listen and gives her food anyway. But as they're doing their cookout, and as Chuck and Lindsay and as Nelson and Lindsay actually explain that the reason they're actually there is because of the freedom movement and that they actually wanted to be a little bit more liberated in their life, so they decided to join it. But as they're actually doing their little cookout, Mr. Shanaka actually comes to get Chuck and tells him that he actually has a call from the president who wants to talk to him immediately. And as it turns out, the reason the president wants to talk with Chuck is because the president is apparently given a go-ahead on something called Project Homebound, which we find out about a little bit later this episode. But we don't actually find out what it is until later that night. So during the scene, Sam Speed is actually trying to catch a speeder who is going way too fast, and Sam even remarks that that there's actually only one person he would allow, quote unquote, break the law, and that's Sonic, because obviously Sonic is his rival in speed, and obviously they have grown close as friends and rivals, and even reminisces a little bit, pointing out that he can't believe he actually wound up being friends with Sonic, but here we are. But in case he proceeds to chase after the guy. He continues to chase after the guy in their own respective cars. Until the guy he's chasing goes over the edge and through the guardrail. At which point Sonic shows up and saves him. And Sonic and Sam actually catch up a little bit with Sonic asking Sam how work is going, and Sam explains it's the same old, but he's actually happy Sonic is there, which means they can actually go ahead for a race. As Sam actually kicks his car into high gear and Sonic is easily able to outpace him, Sonic, he notices that Sonic has gotten a lot faster, which is strange to him. But in any case, as that's going on, Chris is actually writing a paper that night, and he's trying to figure out what exactly it is he wants to do. And eventually, after doing some thinking and remembering all the good Sonic has done and how much he's helped him over the past 2 seasons, decides that what he wants to do, his life is make the world a better place, similar to how Sonic does. And although he does throw out his rough draft because he feels it's a bit too corny, but he hears something splashing around in his pool outside and goes to investigate, and believing it to be Sonic, and even reminisces about the time he saved Sonic from his pool, only to discover that it is indeed a cat, and then just kind of goes on his merry way. But as Chris is doing that, Christina Cooper, the president's aide, actually shows up with a new character, Dr. Kim Bickley, who comes to actually meet with Chuck. As it turns out, she has a very good reason for doing so, because as we find out, time is apparently going to a stop. So as Dr. Bickley explains, Mobius and Earth were actually the same planet at some point until an unknown phenomenon caused the two to separate and become separated in their own dimensions and have their own separate timelines. However, she then later goes on to explain that as with each iteration of Chaos Control that they've done over the series, the two planets have actually begun to merge more and more, to the point where eventually they're going to merge entirely, and then shortly afterward, their respective timelines are going to merge as well, and time is effectively going to come to a complete stop, because there will be no past, there will be no future. There will only and Chuck later explains that they actually do have a plan. Which is that they're going to gather the 7 Chaos Emeralds and create a device to send everybody home, aka Project Homebound. And they do point out that that's best for everybody that Sonic and his friends actually do go home, since obviously they're the ones causing the space-time phenomenon because they're just there. It's not even their fault, as Chuck later explains in the episode. It's just the fact that they're on Earth that's causing the time suspension phenomenon to occur. However, Chris, at that exact moment, Chris walks back into the house and hears the whole thing, and he doesn't take it well. So Chris is understandably upset because, as we've established, he's very much best friends with Sonic at this point, and is very much going to miss him, and is completely in denial about the fact that they can actually send Sonic back. And even backs up his point by pointing out all the good Sonic has done by being there. Obviously Sonic has saved the world countless times, sometimes by Dr. Eggman, sometimes not. But he does explain that they can't send him away because he's a hero, and that regardless of what the president actually says, he won't let them send Sonic back. But Chuck later re-explains that they have to, because obviously if they don't, then time is going to stop, and that is very much a bad thing, since they're literally going to just be stuck in the present forever, and nobody would ever age. Chris points out that he doesn't fully believe that this is actually something real, and believes that Dr. Eggman is the one behind it, and then proceeds to go to run out of the house to go and try and find Dr. Eggman. It's completely apparent that he is a little bit hell-bent on actually finding Eggman and proving that it is indeed some sort of trick created by Eggman, because he does go off to track down Deco and Bogo, since they would know where Eggman is. As Chuck explains that it might after Chris leaves, Chuck does explain that it might actually be good for him to actually go and find Dr. Eggman, because because as we explained, Chris is very in denial about accepting the truth well, long story short, he's very in denial about the fact that Sonic has to go home. But also does explain why that's a bad thing, demonstrating with the broken vase that Chris actually, I didn't mention this, but Chris actually breaks a vase when he finds out, and Chris and Chuck and Tails actually begin to start cleaning it up. But he then proceeds to explain why exactly this time suspension phenomenon is a bad thing. As he points out, yes, at first it does sound like a paradisical thing. That obviously, if Chuck never got old, and Dee and Tails could work together forever for basically eternity, they could create countless scientific breakthroughs and make the world a much better place because of that. However, as Chuck explains, forward progress just becomes pretty much meaningless regardless of how much you do, because as he explains, it effectively would trap the entire world in a time loop. Every day would be exactly the same, which means there would be no need for forward progress, because literally anything you would do would be reset the next day, and you would have no memories of it. So you would effectively just be doing the same thing over and over, and you would never get anything done. So for that reason, he does explain that they actually do need to find the Chaos Emeralds and actually send everybody home, and does have a heartfelt goodbye with Tails, pointing out that he's going to miss him. And then they proceed to go back to work to actually figure out how to actually assemble the gate, with Tails explaining that over the course of the series they apparently picked up 5 of the 7 Chaos Emeralds that they need to actually get the Project Homebound to work. But even then, they remark that they're not entirely sure if they can actually pull it off, since obviously up to this point, Chaos Control has been kind of finicky as to how it actually works. Obviously, across the several times Sonic has used it, he's tried to send them home, but has unintentionally brought everything to Earth. Obviously, he's brought several locations to and from Mobius to Earth, and even several different characters, including Vanilla, the Chaotix, their respective homes and hideouts, and all of a bunch of other Sonic the Hedgehog locations are now on Earth. So obviously it's a very finicky, but even then they have to try. Meanwhile, Chris does eventually track down Deco and Bogo, who are out late shopping for groceries to actually make into food. And Chris eventually does track them down and begs them to take them to Eggman, but obviously everybody starts giving them weird stares, so they drag Chris into a nearby alley to further explain that they don't know where Dr. Eggman is. As they explain, they don't know where he is or how to find him, and obviously even if they did, he's not going to let them back in willingly. But then they reveal that they actually do have an idea on how to actually track down Dr. Eggman, and decide to summon Bokoon. So, and the way they do this is something that they actually foreshadowed last episode, but never really paid off in a meaningful way where they can actually link up with each other. Yeah, they actually successfully do it in this episode to create a Bokoon beacon, to create what is called Bokoon beacon mode. Long story short, Deco collapses his head in on itself, and then Boko just kind of sits on his head by collapsing his legs inside himself, and then that's how they create the Bokoon beacon. They combine together. They effectively combine together and signal Bokoon. And Bokoon does eventually come to find them. Although he isn't entirely happy to see them, pointing out that obviously they were traitors to Dr. Eggman, and obviously they should be welcomed back with open arms. But Chris asks Bokoon to actually send him to Dr. Eggman, and pointing out that he actually does need to see him. And while Bokoon initially refuses, he then proceeds to fall out of the air because he hasn't eaten in however long since Deco and Boko have actually left. And complains about how he hasn't had any food and has actually been skipping lunch because Dr. Eggman is a terrible cook. At which point Deco and Boko strike up a bargain with Bokoon. They'll agree to cook for him and make him some food if he takes Chris and them back to Dr. Eggman. And Bokoon agrees. He decides to lead them back to Dr. Eggman's base, which is just a shack in the middle of the woods. At which point Chris proceeds to confront Dr. Eggman with his time suspension phenomenon plot, which Dr. Eggman is a little bit confused because it's not his plan at all, but he decides to just kind of go with it as a joke and declare that he is indeed going to send Sonic, that he is planning to send Sonic away so that he can found the Eggman Empire without Sonic interfering. And while Chris is initially satisfied with that answer, he quickly realizes that Dr. Eggman is making a joke out of it and orders him to take it seriously. So Dr. Eggman explains that it doesn't really matter if they're sending Sonic home and he can found his Eggman Empire because as he explains, he's being sent home too. Because while he is was born on Earth and was raised on Earth, obviously he's more Mobian than Earth person at this point. So obviously he's going to affect the time suspension phenomenon as well. And they then proceeds to explain that he doesn't really mind going back since he can actually found his Eggman Empire over there if he can, because obviously he can't do that if time is stopped. And B, if it means that he can actually, if it means that he never has to see Chris again, then so be it. And then explains that he quickly realizes that Chris and Sonic's adventures are at an end, and Chris is clearly unable to accept that. But as he points out and says from personal experience that sometimes life just kind of pushes you down and kind of sucks, but that's just life, and you just kind of have to deal with that. But Chris still can't accept the truth even after hearing it from Eggman, who, while not the most trustworthy guy, is confirming what Chuck and the others have actually been saying. So he then proceeds to run off and go cool his head off. And Dingo and Boko go to actually try and stop him, but Eggman tells them that it's no use and that they should just let him go. But once Chris is long gone, he then whispers to himself that he's actually going to miss Chris once he's gone. So yeah, while he does admit to Chris's face that he is going to hate him, that he does hate him because he works so long with Sonic. His dialogue here does imply that that's not exactly the case. He has, oddly enough, grown fond of the kid. He hasn't grown fond of Chris and is going to miss him, although more as a hero antagonist kind of thing rather than as a friendship kind of thing. But he is going to miss facing off against Chris every day, and it is obviously going to take a toll on him. So at which point Chris runs to a cliff to actually go and ponder everything. And after doing some thinking, decides that he should actually return home and kind of support the entire idea that the time suspension phenomenon is happening and he should just prepare for it. So he does go back home and everybody is happy that he's actually returned. Pointing out that that they're actually happy that he's finally come back and seems to have calmed down. Chris does apologize to everybody for freaking them out. But does point out that they do have a lot of work to do and that he should probably go to bed and get a good night's sleep. And he does that, and his parents even tell him that he can sleep in, since obviously the time suspension phenomenon is a very suspenseful thing, and obviously he's just going to be worried about that. But Chris does thank them for that, and then proceeds to close his door. But as soon as he does, he looks out the window and wonders where Sonic is out loud. And meanwhile, Sonic is racing around in the clifftop somewhere, and he actually hears Chris, which is kind of a weird thing. I don't think they've ever fully explained it. It's sort of some sort of spiritual thing, but as he's wondering whether or not he actually heard Chris, he actually spies something in the crack of one of the cliffs that he's running around in and wonders what it is. So yeah, this episode's interesting. So yeah, long story short, the series is coming to an end mainly because it has to. The series is coming to an end because if Sonic doesn't go back home, he's going to cause a space-time phenomenon that's going to cause time itself to stop. So obviously obviously Sonic needs to go home, or bad things are going to happen. And not just Sonic, everybody has to go home. All of his friends need to go home as well, or it's going to become disastrous for both Mobius and Earth. Obviously, the fate of two worlds hang in the balance with this, and obviously now Sonic has to go home, or both of those worlds are going to actually collapse in on themselves, and time is just going to stop. So yeah, that's an interesting premise going into the final couple of episodes for the second season. I'm interested to see where this is going to go, but in any case, yeah, that's my review of Sonic X. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. And also, be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It really helps me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks that I'm always saying thanks, so be sure to check those out in the description below as well. Also, if you want to go help support me even further, be sure to go check out my Twitch down in the description. You can either check it out by clicking the link in the description. You can either use the link that's on my end card, that it should be there, or you could just type twitch.tv/ZackMars.Switch into Google or wherever, and it'll take you there. Any of those methods will work to actually go and check it out. But I do stream every Sunday, 2:30 Eastern Standard Time. So if you do want to catch those, then by all means go check those out. And finally, if you want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent video. It may or may not be this one. Whereas the bottom video is a video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me. So if you want to try something new or see more of what you like, then be sure to check both of those videos out. But regardless of whether or not you do any or all of those things, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!